Predestination is one of the most controversial topics in Christianity. But, after all, are we all predestined by God? Let us embark on a journey of understanding, and by the end of this video, I promise we will say a prayer together, seeking wisdom and clarity on this profound subject. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined. Romans chapter 8 verse 29. Predestination is one of those mighty pillars in the grand cathedral of Christian doctrine, often causing both awe and bewilderment. To grasp its essence, we turn to three key biblical texts that serve as primary beacons: Matthew chapter 24 verse 31, Romans chapter 8 verses 29 to 30, and Ephesians chapter 1 verse 5. Imagine a scene of celestial grandeur as described in Matthew chapter 24 verse 31. And he will send his angels with a loud trumpet call, and they will gather his elect from the four winds, from one end of the heavens to the other. This passage speaks to the divine selection, where the chosen, those predestined, are called forth by heavenly messengers, signaling a profound and definitive act of God's will. Pivoting to Romans chapter 8 verses 29 to 30, we encounter a theological treasure trove. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, that he might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. Here, Apostle Paul crafts a chain of divine actions that starts with foreknowledge and culminates in glorification. These verses articulate the intimate and purposeful nature of God's plan, emphasizing that those chosen by God are meant to reflect the very image of Christ. Lastly, Ephesians chapter 1 verse 5 provides a stirring vision of our destiny in God's eternal plan. He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with his pleasure and will. This speaks of an intentional and loving decree by God, marking believers as his children through the sacrificial love of Jesus. It underscores the deep relational aspect of predestination, not merely a selection, but an invitation into divine family and inheritance. In examining these passages, it becomes clear that predestination is not merely an abstract concept, but a tapestry woven with threads of divine love, purpose, and destiny. The elect are not chosen at random but are part of a grand divine narrative that reflects God's sovereign will and boundless grace. Biblical Overview. Now, dear listener, let us embark on a journey through the sacred texts to unveil the grand tapestry of predestination woven within the Bible. Imagine, if you will, a panorama painted by divine hands, where every stroke and hue reveals the intricate design of God's overarching plan. Our first port of call is the book of Genesis, where the story of Jacob and Esau unfolds. Imagine a scene teeming with the expectancy of a nation's destiny. Here, not merely by human merit but through divine choice, Jacob is favored over Esau. This narrative serves as a vivid illustration of predestination, a concept not born from human fairness but from divine purpose. We read in Genesis chapter 25 verse 23, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you will be separated. One people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger." It becomes evident that from the very inception of their existence, their paths were divinely appointed. Moving forward, we delve into the book of Exodus, where the story of Israel's election is prominently displayed. Picture, if you will, a nation enslaved, their cries rising to the heavens. It is here, amid the trials and tribulations, that God selects Israel as his chosen people. In Deuteronomy chapter 7 verses 6 to 8, Moses declares to the Israelites, "For you are a people holy to the Lord your God. The Lord your God has chosen you out of all the peoples on the face of the earth to be his people, his treasured possession." Here, The election of Israel transcends mere favoritism. It is about a grand design wherein Israel becomes a beacon of God's glory on earth. These stories, dear friend, are not isolated tales of old but are threads within the greater narrative that spans from Genesis to Revelation. They invite us to ponder deeply the mysteries of divine selection, how it shapes the destinies of individuals and nations alike. The Apostle Paul, elucidating on these ancient truths in Romans chapter 9 verses 11 to 13, reminds us, "Yet, before the twins were born or had done anything good or bad, in order that God's purpose in election might stand, not by works but by him who calls, she was told, the older will serve the younger. Just as it is written, Jacob I loved, but Esau I hated." These words challenge us to see beyond the surface and grasp the profound workings of God's sovereign will. Therefore, as we traverse the contours of these biblical narratives, we find ourselves standing not at the precipice of capricious fate or random chance but before the altar of divine purpose. Predestination, as painted in these sacred texts, is a symphony orchestrated by the Almighty, echoing through the annals of time and resounding in the hearts of the faithful. So let us meditate upon these truths, allowing them to illuminate the path of our understanding, and to draw us nearer to the heart of God. Understanding the historical context of biblical passages concerning predestination is crucial to grasping their full meaning. The Apostle Paul, whose writings are some of the most frequently cited in discussions of predestination, lived and wrote during a time of immense socio-political transformation. Paul was a Hellenistic Jew and a Roman citizen, a combination that granted him unique insights and a broad audience. The early Christian communities, to which he wrote his epistles, were situated in a Roman Empire marked by stark inequalities, varied religious practices, and philosophical inquiries. The concept of predestination in Paul's letters emerges against the backdrop of Jewish expectations of divine election. The Jews of Paul's era were deeply familiar with the idea that God had chosen Israel as his people, a theme resonating through their scriptures. This undercurrent of divine selection is pivotal in understanding Paul's theological assertions. Moreover, the Greco-Roman world had its own notions of fate and destiny, often intertwined with Stoic and philosophical views prevalent at the time. Paul's audiences, whether Jews in diaspora or Gentiles newly converted to Christianity, were not strangers to these concepts. The intersection of these diverse religious and philosophical environments inevitably influenced Paul's articulation of predestination. When interpreting Paul's texts like Romans chapter 8 verses 29 to 30, it is essential to recognize that he wrote to address the needs, questions, and challenges of specific communities. For instance, the believers in Rome were grappling with issues of identity, the balance between Jewish and Gentile believers, and their place within God's salvific plan. Paul's discourse on predestination provided a theological foundation to reassure them of their role and security in God's overarching plan. Furthermore, Paul's emphasis on predestination must be seen within the broader narrative of God's redemptive history. His writings appear to weave individual destiny with collective redemption, portraying a God who orchestrates history towards a divine purpose while also ensuring personal salvation for those predestined. By situating Paul's letters within their historical milieu, we gain a richer understanding of the profound and sometimes controversial notions of predestination. What Paul offers is not merely a theological abstraction but a message of hope, identity, and continuity for communities navigating the complexities of faith in a diverse and often hostile world. In essence, to truly grasp the weight and intent behind Paul's words on predestination, one must appreciate the confluence of Jewish tradition, Greco-Roman thought, and the immediate circumstances of the early Christian communities. Only then can we begin to understand how these ancient texts continue to speak so powerfully into the fabric of human existence today. Let us turn our attention to two of Christianity's most indomitable pillars, Paul and Peter. These figures, etched indelibly in the annals of sacred history, played pivotal roles in shaping the doctrine of predestination. Their lives, teachings, and writings reverberate through time, offering profound insights into the mind of the divine concerning humanity's ultimate fate. Paul, once known as Saul of Tarsus, is perhaps the most illustrious proponent of predestination within the New Testament. His epiphany on the road to Damascus transformed him from a relentless persecutor of the fledgling Christian sect into its most fervent apostle. In his epistles, Paul ardently elucidates the concept of predestination. Ephesians chapter 1 verse 5 encapsulates his theology succinctly. He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with his pleasure and will. This verse, among others, illuminates the conviction that God, in his omniscience, foreordained the destinies of his chosen ones. To Paul, predestination is not merely a theoretical abstraction but a testament to God's sovereign grace, lavished upon humanity irrespective of merit. Consider Paul's magnum opus, the Epistle to the Romans, wherein he masterfully intertwines the strands of predestination with the tapestry of divine justice and mercy. Romans chapter 8 verses 29 to 30 stands as a monumental declaration. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. And those he predestined, he also called. Those he called, he also justified. Those he justified, he also glorified. Here, Paul delineates a divine sequence, a golden chain of salvation that underscores the deliberate and gracious hand of God in the entire salvific process. Predestination, in Paul's theology, is both the origin and the guarantee of the believer's journey towards ultimate glorification. Peter, the stalwart apostle, complements Paul's rigorous theological exposition with his pastoral heart. Known as the rock upon which Christ declared he would build his church, Peter's epistles reflect a deeply personal and communal understanding of predestination. In 1 Peter chapter 1 verse 2, he addresses his readers as those who have been chosen according to the foreknowledge of God the Father, through the sanctifying work of the Spirit, to be obedient to Jesus Christ and sprinkled with his blood. Peter's language, replete with the warmth of a shepherd to his flock, frames predestination within the context of divine foreknowledge and covenantal love. Moreover, Peter, ever the fisherman turned fisher of men, illuminates predestination not as a doctrine to be dissected academically but as a source of living hope and assurance. In 2 Peter chapter 1 verse 10, he exhorts believers to make every effort to confirm your calling and election. This juxtaposition of divine initiative and human responsibility is quintessentially Petrine, underscoring that predestination, far from engendering complacency, ought to inspire diligence and faithfulness in the believer's walk. The contributions of Paul and Peter to the doctrine of predestination are monumental and multifaceted. Paul's rigorous theological prowess and Peter's pastoral warmth provide a holistic understanding that has shaped Christian thought for millennia. Through their teachings, we perceive predestination as a profound mystery of divine grace, a beacon of hope amidst the vicissitudes of life, and a call to steadfast faith and obedience. As we reflect on these towering figures, we are reminded that predestination, at its core, is not a doctrine to be feared but a testament to the unwavering love and sovereignty of God. In the tapestry of divine revelation, the threads woven by Paul and Peter form a beautiful pattern that beckons us to trust in the grand design of the Almighty. Let us delve into some of the most profound and essential theological concepts that have long intrigued and divided scholars and believers alike. Election or divine selection, is a deeply rooted biblical doctrine suggesting that God has chosen particular individuals or groups for a specific purpose or destiny. One encounters this idea repeatedly in the Scriptures, with the Apostle Paul stating, "For those whom he foreknew he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son." Romans chapter 8 verse 29. This choice is not grounded in any foreseen merit or action on the part of the chosen, but rather in God's sovereign will, a decision made before the foundation of the world, as highlighted in Ephesians chapter 1 verse 4. Now, let us pivot to the concept of *** free will**, a notion that appears to stand in stark contrast to predestination. Free will asserts that individuals possess the inherent capability to make choices independent of any preordained plan. This autonomy is vividly depicted in passages like Deuteronomy chapter 30 verse 19. "This day I call the heavens and the earth as witnesses against you that I have set before you life and death, blessings and curses. Now choose life, so that you and your children may live." Such verses emphasize human responsibility and the significant role personal choice plays in the grand tapestry of existence. The third, and perhaps most pivotal concept, is ** divine sovereignty. This asserts that God reigns supreme over all creation, orchestrating history and individual lives in accordance with his divine will and purpose. Proverbs chapter 16 verse 9 beautifully encapsulates this idea. "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." This sovereignty is not the negation of free will, but rather a comprehensive governance within which human decisions operate, akin to actors playing their roles in a divinely written symphony. At first glance, these three concepts, election, free will, and divine sovereignty, may appear mutually exclusive, a seemingly irreconcilable paradox. Yet, diving deeper into theological reflections and biblical exegesis reveals a harmonious interplay. Theologians like Augustine of Hippo and Thomas Aquinas have wrestled with these very themes. Augustine, for instance, stressed that our free choices are part of God's sovereign plan, suggesting that God, in his omniscience, knows and permits all choices, thus encompassing them within his divine foreordination. Aquinas similarly argued that divine predestination does not nullify human freedom. Instead, it affirms that God, in his infinite knowledge and perfection, knows the freely made decisions of individuals. These interpretations invite us to explore the boundless depths of divine wisdom, wherein God's sovereign plan and human freedom coalesce into a cohesive and majestic narrative. This theological tapestry, rich with the threads of divine intention and human action, forms a compelling picture of faith, providing believers with both the assurance of God's ultimate control and the profound dignity of human responsibility. As we ponder these profound truths, let us be reminded of Paul's words in Philippians chapter 2 verses 12 to 13. "Continue to work out your salvation with fear and trembling, for it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill his good purpose." This passage beautifully encapsulates the delicate balance and wondrous mystery of our cooperation with divine grace, urging us to embrace the awe-inspiring partnership between our wills and God's sovereign purpose. Imagine, dear listener, stepping into a vast and dimly lit library, where the air is thick with the aroma of ancient tomes. On one side sits the venerable Augustine of Hippo, a Roman African bishop from the 4th century, his eyes gleaming with wisdom as he pores over the scriptures. On the other side, there is John Calvin, a 16th century French theologian and reformer, his stern visage reflecting the weight of divine sovereignty and eternal decrees. First, let us approach Augustine, a man whose thoughts have stirred the hearts of believers for centuries. Augustine wrestled deeply with the notion of free will and divine grace. He proposed that all humanity is inherently fallen, a consequence of Adam's original sin. Because of this inherent corruption, Augustine argued that humans are utterly incapable of choosing good without the intervention of God's grace. It is here that his concept of predestination takes root. For Augustine, God, in his omniscience, has preordained a select number to receive his grace and thus be saved. These are the elect. The rest are left to their just deserts, to their fallen nature. Augustine did not approach this topic with a whimsical mind. No, he was profoundly aware of the weight of his words, the eternal consequences they carried. He carefully balanced his views on God's justice and mercy, wrestling with the tension between divine foreknowledge and human responsibility. Augustine's intricate exploration laid a foundation that profoundly shaped Christian thought, emphasizing that salvation is ultimately an act of divine grace, not human merit. Now, let us turn to John Calvin, a towering figure of the Reformation. Calvin took Augustine's ideas and chiseled them into a more systematic and rigid doctrine. Known widely through his seminal work, Institutes of the Christian Religion, Calvin's interpretation of predestination is both clear and uncompromising. He proposed the doctrine of double predestination, suggesting that God has predestined some for eternal life and others for eternal damnation. For Calvin, this decree is utterly immutable, reflecting God's supreme sovereignty and the mysteriousness of his will. Calvin's vision of God is one of overwhelming grandeur and authority. In his perspective, God's will is the ultimate cause of all that happens. Humanity, then, is like clay in the hands of a potter, entirely subject to divine shaping and purposes. Despite the seeming harshness, Calvin believed this view offered profound comfort. For if salvation is solely God's work, then it is utterly secure, independent of human frailty. God's purposes cannot be thwarted, and His grace cannot fail. The reverberations of Augustine and Calvin's teachings on predestination have thundered through the corridors of church history, influencing countless theological debates and shaping the minds of contemporary theologians. Their works caution us against the dangers of reducing the divine mystery to simplistic terms. They challenge us to grapple earnestly with the majesty and mystery of God, His grace, and His justice. So, as we pause to ponder these monumental ideas, let us remember that we are engaged not merely in an intellectual exercise, but in a profound exploration of the divine will. Augustine and Calvin invite us to see beyond our limited perspective, to humble ourselves before the ineffable wisdom of God. Whether we find ourselves aligned with their views or not, we are called to seek earnestly, to question deeply, and to tread carefully on this sacred ground. In closing, dear listener, let the thoughts of these influential theologians stir your heart and mind. Reflect on the grace and sovereignty of God, and let the mystery draw you ever closer to the divine. When one delves into the heart of Christianity, the concept of predestination inevitably surfaces as a cornerstone of theological discussion. Let us, therefore, engage with the traditional views on this profound doctrine and examine the arguments that support them. The belief in predestination, that is, the divine foreordaining of all that will happen, particularly with regard to the salvation or damnation of individuals, finds its roots deeply entrenched in the Bible. One of the most prominent scriptural foundations for this view can be observed in Paul's epistle to the Romans. In Romans chapter 8 verses 29 to 30, Paul writes, "For those God foreknew, He also predestined to be conformed to the image of His Son, that He might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. And those He predestined, He also called. Those He called, He also justified. Those He justified, He also glorified." This passage distinctly outlines a sequence of divine actions that begin with foreknowledge and culminate in glorification, underscoring the notion that God's plan for salvation is established long before an individual is aware of it. Moreover, the predestination doctrine is further bolstered by texts such as Ephesians chapter 1 verses 4 to 5, wherein Paul declares, "For He chose us in Him before the creation of the world to be holy and blameless in His sight. In love He predestined us for adoption to sonship through Jesus Christ, in accordance with His pleasure and will." These verses reinforce the idea that God's selection of individuals for salvation is an expression of His sovereign love and purposeful will, enacted even before the foundation of the world. Turning to theological scholars, we find substantial support for the traditional paradigm of predestination in the works of early Church Fathers and Reformation theologians. Augustine of Hippo, a salient figure in early Christian thought, ardently defended the doctrine of predestination. In his work, On the Predestination of the Saints, Augustine asserts that divine grace is bestowed according to God's inscrutable will, independent of any foreseen merit in the individual. He posits that the omniscient Creator knows well the ultimate destiny of every soul and ordains their path accordingly. Centuries later, John Calvin, a principal architect of Reformed theology, expounded upon the doctrine with great fervor and clarity. In his seminal work, Institutes of the Christian Religion, Calvin emphasizes the absolute sovereignty of God in salvation. He articulates that predestination is God's eternal decree, by which he compacted with himself what he willed to become of each man. For all are not created in equal condition. Rather, eternal life is foreordained for some, eternal damnation for others. Calvin's stark portrayal of predestination underscores the belief that divine election and reprobation rests solely on God's will, rather than human action or merit. Support for traditional views on predestination extends beyond theological treatises and reaches into the very practices of the Church. The liturgical traditions and confessional standards of many Protestant denominations, such as the Westminster Confession of Faith, affirm the doctrine of predestination. This confession articulates that God, from all eternity, did, by the most wise and holy counsel of his own will, freely and unchangeably ordain whatsoever comes to pass. This position cements the doctrine within the framework of Orthodox Christian belief as an integral aspect of divine providence and sovereignty. In summary, the arguments supporting traditional views on predestination are deeply rooted in scriptural evidence, historical theological expositions, and established church doctrines. They present a cohesive narrative that emphasizes God's absolute sovereignty, eternal foreknowledge, and purposeful will in the unfolding drama of human redemption. As we ponder this intricate and profound doctrine, let us seek to appreciate the profound mystery and grandeur of God's plan for humanity, assured that our understanding, though limited, rests upon a foundation set by the divine himself. Challenges to traditional views. One must bear in mind that the doctrine of predestination, though deeply rooted in Christian theology, has not enjoyed unanimous acceptance throughout the centuries. Various theological perspectives and academic debates have persistently challenged the traditional views, providing a rich tapestry of thought and reflection. To begin with, the interplay between divine sovereignty and human free will has been a perennial bone of contention. Arminianism, for instance, arose as a significant counterpoint to the strict predestinarian views espoused by Calvinism. Named after Jacobus Arminius, Arminianism posits that God's predestination is based on his foreknowledge of who would freely choose to accept or reject Christ's salvation. This perspective underscores human free will and responsibility, thereby challenging the deterministic inclinations of traditional Calvinist thought. Another challenge emanates from open theism, a more contemporary theological movement. Open theism advocates for a dynamic relationship between God and humanity, wherein God does not fully determine future human actions but rather knows the range of possibilities and responds in real time to human choices. This view significantly diverges from the traditional understanding by proposing that the future is not exhaustively predetermined but open and somewhat indeterminate. Furthermore, process theology presents yet another formidable critique. Rooted in the philosophy of Alfred North Whitehead, process theology envisions God not as an unchangeable sovereign but as a being deeply involved in the temporal process, co-creating reality with creation. According to this view, God's knowledge and power are persuasive rather than coercive, allowing for a more reciprocal interaction with the world. This perspective radically alters the traditional narrative of a predetermining deity. The academic realm also contributes its share of critiques and alternatives. Historical critical methods of biblical interpretation, for example, re-examine the scriptural texts on predestination within their historical and cultural contexts. Scholars scrutinize how ancient Near Eastern thought, Second Temple Judaism, and early Christian communities influenced the development of predestination doctrines. These historical insights often reveal tensions, developmental trajectories, and diverse understandings that challenge monolithic interpretations. Additionally, philosophical inquiries into the nature of time, causality, and knowledge pose substantial questions. If God exists outside of time, how does this atemporal existence interact with temporal events? Can human freedom coexist with divine foreknowledge without leading to fatalism? These philosophical questions demand rigorous contemplation and often lead to conclusions that question traditional predestinarian positions. In conclusion, the challenges to traditional views on predestination are multifaceted, encompassing theological, philosophical, and historical dimensions. Each challenge invites us to delve deeper into the mysteries of faith, to question our assumptions, and to expand our understanding of the divine-human relationship. While the traditional views have provided a foundation, the continued exploration and dialogue enrich the tapestry of Christian thought, underscoring the dynamic and living nature of theological inquiry. Dear listener, as we delve into the intricate topic of predestination, it becomes enlightening to cast our intellectual nets wider than the familiar waters of our immediate faith tradition. Indeed, the notion that human lives are guided by forces beyond their control is not exclusive to Christianity. It is, if one might allow the term, a universal apprehension embedded in the consciousness of diverse faiths and mythologies. Let us begin with the Greeks, whose mythos abounds with the inexorable dictates of fate. Consider the Moirai, or Fates, those three enigmatic sisters who spun, measured, and ultimately cut the thread of life. These ancient beliefs showcase a cosmos wherein destiny is woven with the wool of inevitability, and even the mighty Zeus had to heed their decrees. The Greeks, though polytheistic, impart a strikingly similar sense of predestined outcomes, albeit framed within a pantheon of capricious deities. In the Eastern paradigms, Hinduism offers an elaborate doctrine of karma and dharma. Here, predestination is intricately woven into the karmic cycles and one's dharma, or duty, aligned with the cosmic order. It is a fatalistic impetus that propels the soul through samsara, the cycle of rebirth. Yet, unlike the Christian view that is driven by divine election, Hindu predestination is a reciprocal dance between past actions and present duty. Buddhism, too, speaks a language of interconnectedness and causality. The Buddhist concept of dependent origination suggests that all phenomena, including human experiences, arise and cease following a web of conditions. While not predestination in the Abrahamic sense, it speaks to an ordered universe where individual paths are shaped by preceding actions, resonating with Calvinistic determinism albeit void of a personal deity. In the world of Islam, we find the concept of qadr, divine predestination. The Quran speaks of Allah's sovereign will over all creation, determining every affair. Here, the interplay between divine omniscience and human agency mirrors the theological gymnastics found in Christian discourses on predestination and free will. Muslims navigate a path wherein trust in Allah's plan coexists uneasily, yet necessarily, with moral responsibility. Moving into the ancient mythologies, the Norse tales bring us the inexorable Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. The Norsemen envisioned a universe bounded by a stark destiny, not driven by moral or salvific concerns but by a cosmic struggle that even gods cannot escape. This adds a poetic, if somber, resonance to the theme of predestination that stirs something profoundly human in its fatalistic grandeur. And yet, What shall we make of these insights when juxtaposed with the Christian understanding of predestination articulated primarily through the Apostle Paul? The Christian doctrine, markedly distinct, rests on the bedrock of a personal and relational God who preordains with both justice and mercy, promising not extinction but redemption. This sovereign grace offers hope within predestination, a paradox that invites trust in divine love rather than mere resignation. In essence, as we peel back the layers of different religious frameworks, we find both stark contrasts and poignant parallels. Common threads of divine orchestration and human destiny abound, colored by the unique theological brushes of each tradition. Such comparative exposition not only broadens our appreciation but deepens the gravitas with which we approach our understanding of God's plan, beseeching us to hold our beliefs with both conviction and humility. It is indeed a curious thing, my dear readers, to consider how the dust and stones of ancient ruins can whisper truths about our most profound theological inquiries. In the realm of predestination, archaeology has unearthed some fascinating evidence that not only deepens our understanding but also provides a tangible context to the divine narrative. One of the most compelling archaeological discoveries related to predestination comes from the ancient city of Qumran, near the Dead Sea. Within the dusty confines of the Qumran caves, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, containing texts that have piqued the interest of theologians and historians alike. Among these, the Manual of Discipline speaks of a divine plan and a preordained group of the righteous, which strongly parallels the themes seen in the biblical discussions of predestination. Moving from the sands of Qumran to the grand city of Rome, another significant archaeological finding lies within the catacombs, those silent labyrinths beneath the bustling city. Here, early Christian inscriptions and symbols emphasize a sense of being chosen or called, providing a glimpse into the early believers' understanding of their divine selection and predestination. These inscriptions, etched in darkness yet shining with faith, bridge the ancient with our contemporary discussions on divine will. The city of Ephesus also yields its secrets. Archaeologists excavating the grand amphitheater and ancient streets have uncovered texts and artifacts that speak to the early Christian community's beliefs. Letters and proclamations mirror Paul's epistle to the Ephesians, which discusses predestination with vivid clarity. These findings draw a vivid backdrop to the theological assertions made in the Scriptures, grounding them in the lived experiences of our forebears. Another poignant discovery comes from the ancient city of Antioch. In this city, fragments of early Christian writings and church structures have been found. These remnants speak of an early community grappling with the concepts of election and divine foresight. The artifacts unearthed, perhaps a simple cup or a fragment of a manuscript, bear silent testimony to a people's trust in God's preordained plans. Lastly, we turn our gaze to ancient Palestine, where numerous excavations have revealed synagogues and early Christian homes. Among the most significant finds is a mosaic proclaiming God's chosen people. Such an artifact provides a direct link, a mosaic of belief, connecting ancient understandings of predestination with the elaborate tapestry of our theological heritage. In examining these archaeological finds, it is quite evident that the concept of being known, chosen, and predestined by the divine is a thread woven deeply into the fabric of early Christian and Jewish thought. As we hold these fragments of the past, we are invited to see the continuity of faith, where the past speaks to the present and beyond. Through archaeology, we understand that the notion of predestination was not merely an abstract idea. It was a lived reality, inscribed on the walls of catacombs, written on the scrolls of desert communities, and etched into the very paths trodden by early Christians. These discoveries do more than fill museum cases. They affirm that the beliefs and hopes of those who came before us are as alive and significant today as they were in antiquity. And so, dear reader, as we sift through the dust and examine the ruins, we are not merely looking into history. We are listening to a divine narrative that continues to unfold, reminding us that, indeed, we are part of a grand and mysterious plan, etched into the annals of time and the very heart of God. The cerebral corridors through which scholars tread. It's a privileged journey for those daring to traverse the enlightening, and oftentimes contentious, landscape of academic debate. Let us imagine for a moment this grand domain, where discovery and tradition clamor for predominance, each holding fragments of truth about the doctrine of predestination. At the heart of these debates lies a fundamental question. Do these archaeological discoveries bolster the bulwark of traditional interpretations, or do they chisel away at the very foundation we've come to accept? Picture, if you will, a great hall where theologians and historians alike congregate, weighed down by dusty manuscripts and vibrant dialogues. The first school of thought represents the classical believers, the champions of antiquity, as we might call them. These learned men and women ardently argue that recent discoveries, be they inscriptions or ancient texts, serve as incontrovertible evidence that the traditional views espoused by church fathers like Augustine and theologians such as Calvin still stand firm. These scholars emphasize how certain artifacts align neatly with the scriptures and commentaries of old, thus providing an anchor to cherished convictions. Yet, within this grand hall, we also encounter the challengers, illumined minds who assert that these newfound relics suggest otherwise. Their keen eyes scrutinize each artifact, raising probing questions that unsettle the orthodox narrative. Are these inscriptions truly affirming predestination as understood by Augustine, or do they offer a nuanced storyline yet to be fully chronicled? Consider, for instance, papyrus fragments discovered in remote caves. While some argue these texts unequivocally support predestination, others contend that they highlight a more complex interplay between divine foreknowledge and human freedom. It's as if we're searching for a harmonious melody within a symphony resplendent with counterpoint and dissonance. Moreover, these scholarly discussions reveal fascinating revelations about the socio-political ramifications of predestination. Where some findings suggest that early Christian communities embraced the doctrine to offer comfort and divine assurance during persecution, others posit that it served as an ecclesiastical tool to assert control and orthodoxy. The dialogues grow even more intricate when theological minds from other cultures and religions enter the discourse, bringing with them rich tapestries of interpretation. They compare Christian predestination with parallel concepts in Islam, Judaism, and even ancient mythologies, demanding an ever-expanding contemplation of determinism versus autonomy. Thus, what emerges from this academic milieu is not an unequivocal answer, but rather an enduring invitation to delve deeper. Each discovery, each newly unearthed text or artifact, becomes a piece of the grand mosaic, a mosaic that continually shifts and evolves, echoing the divine paradox of certainty and mystery. Let us, then, appreciate this academic landscape with the humility it demands, acknowledging that within the rigorous pursuit of knowledge lies the essence of faith itself, a path trodden with questions as much as with answers, inviting every seeker to a journey of endless discovery. How splendid it is to witness this interchange! The debate, you see, is as celestial as the doctrine it seeks to unravel. We are all, in some measure, scholars on this path, striving to understand the intricate designs woven by the hands of the divine weaver. Miraculous events, notable examples and perspectives. When one considers the doctrine of predestination in the light of miraculous events, the conversation takes a fascinating turn. It is as if we step into a world where the ordinary laws of nature, which we so rely upon, momentarily bend to let the extraordinary shine through. These occurrences can often appear as tangible intersections between the divine and the mortal, between eternity and time. One might first think of the miracles recorded in the Bible itself, where God's sovereign will unmistakably breaks through the veil of the natural order. Take, for instance, the parting of the Red Sea, an event steeped in divine intervention and one that directly ties into the narrative of Israel's election and liberation from bondage. In this act, the predestined plan for his chosen people is made manifest in a way no human mind could anticipate. Consider also the encounters with Christ during his earthly ministry. The resurrection of Lazarus, after 4 days in the grave, not only illustrated Christ's mastery over life and death but also pointed to the preordained plan of redemption. Lazarus' return to life was, in a sense, a visible signpost, directing the onlooker towards a deeper understanding of God's unfolding purpose for humanity. Moving from biblical accounts to historical narratives, one finds the story of Constantine the Great and his vision before the Battle of the Milvian Bridge. As recorded by Eusebius, Constantine saw a cross of light in the sky along with the words, "In this sign, you will conquer." Here, we see a miraculous sign that altered the course of history, seemingly revealing a facet of God's sovereign plan through an extraordinary event. In more recent times, the phenomenon of the Marian apparitions in Fatima, Portugal, in 1917, provides a compelling testament to divine intervention in human affairs. The visions reported by 3 young shepherd children, culminating in the miracle of the sun witnessed by a large crowd, invite both belief and scrutiny. For the faithful, such events underscore the notion that God's predestined plans can and do punctuate human history in visible, sometimes startling ways. From a scientific perspective, these miraculous phenomena often elude complete explanation. The parting of the Red Sea, for instance, has been the subject of various natural hypotheses, tidal waves, underwater earthquakes, but none can encapsulate the full richness of the biblical narrative. Likewise, the miracle of the sun has prompted discussions ranging from meteorological anomalies to mass psychological phenomena. Yet such explanations invariably fall short of capturing the lived experiences and transformative impact on the witnesses. The theological perspective, meanwhile, emphasizes the significance of these events not as mere interruptions of natural law, but as expressions of divine will interwoven with the fabric of creation. It posits that true miracles are those acts of God that serve his ultimate purpose and point back to his sovereign control over all things, including humanity's destiny. Therefore, these miraculous events, when viewed through the lens of predestination, seem to serve as milestones along the path of God's unfolding story. They are not random acts of wonder but are deeply integrated manifestations of the divine narrative, providing glimpses into the grand tapestry of salvation. They remind us that while we navigate through time, we are dearly loved participants in an eternal play orchestrated by an all-knowing, ever-loving scriptwriter. Reflecting on these occurrences, we find that faith and reason are not at odds but are complementary in the quest to understand God's providential hand. The miraculous does not negate the rational. Rather, it invites the rational mind to transcend its usual boundaries and consider the vast and wondrous possibilities that lie within God's expansive design. There are certain phenomena that, whether through their miraculous nature or their mysterious origins, have a profound impact on both individual faith and collective religious practices. In essence, these occurrences serve as pillars that reinforce the structure of belief, invoking a sense of awe and a deeper connection to the divine. Consider, for instance, the miraculous healings that continue to be reported by believers across the globe. These are not merely anecdotes told by the credulous, but profound experiences that have been documented and scrutinized. Such healings defy natural explanation and compel us to acknowledge a reality that transcends the empirical. They challenge the boundaries of our understanding and beckon us to look beyond the material world to the spiritual one. These events are not relegated to the past. They are alive and well amongst us. Take, for example, the wide range of contemporary testimonies of lives changed through divine intervention. From the individual who finds inexplicable peace in the midst of chaos, to entire communities united by a shared experience of the miraculous, these stories are as varied as they are numerous, each one a testament to the active presence of the divine in our world. On a personal level, such occurrences often lead to a profound transformation in the believer's life. Where once there may have been doubt, now there is certainty. Where there was skepticism, faith. These experiences serve as a catalyst, prompting individuals to seek deeper truths and to engage more earnestly with their spirituality. In many cases, they become moments of conversion, drawing individuals closer to God and instilling a renewed sense of purpose and devotion. On a collective scale, the witnessing of miracles and other inexplicable phenomena can strengthen the bonds within a religious community. Shared experiences of the divine foster a sense of unity and purpose, encouraging the community to support one another in their spiritual journeys. These phenomena can become the bedrock of communal worship, inspiring collective acts of faith and devotion that transcend individual experiences. For many, the impact of these events extends beyond the immediate experience. They shape the way believers read and interpret sacred texts, infusing their reading with a sense of the real and the immediate. Passages that once seemed abstract become alive with meaning. Doctrines that appeared distant become intimately relevant. In this way, the miraculous not only confirms faith but also deepens the understanding of divine revelation. Indeed, the impact of these phenomena on faith and practice is profound and far-reaching. They remind us that our relationship with the divine is not confined to the pages of history or the walls of our places of worship. Rather, it is a living, dynamic interaction that continues to shape and define our lives in ways that are both mysterious and wondrous. And in this ongoing interaction, we find the affirmation that our faith is not in vain, but grounded in a reality that transcends our understanding. One must regard the theme of predestination, not merely as a theological concept confined to the hallowed halls of the academies, but as a profound narrative thread that has been deftly woven into the rich tapestry of human culture. From the grand epics of antiquity to the subtle strokes of modern literature and art, the notion of predestination has captivated the minds and hearts of mankind, urging them to grapple with questions of fate, destiny, and divine orchestration. In ancient literature, one can observe the fingerprints of predestination in works such as Homer's Iliad and Odyssey. These tales, though primarily of Greek origin, resonate with the sense of destiny controlling the lives of gods and mortals alike. The idea that certain outcomes are sealed by the will of higher powers permeates these narratives, offering readers a lens through which to view their own existential queries. The Middle Ages brought with them a surge of artistic representation deeply imbued with the theology of the Christian Church. Dante's Divine Comedy, for instance, is a masterful blend of poetic allegory and theological doctrine. In this magnum opus, the journey through hell, purgatory, and heaven is not just a depiction of the afterlife but an exploration of divine justice and predestination. Each soul's placement within the realms of the afterlife is preordained by their earthly actions, intricately tied to the omniscient design of God. Moving into the Renaissance, one cannot overlook the works of Shakespeare. His tragedies, such as Macbeth and Hamlet, delve deep into the human psyche, exploring themes of fate and free will. The notion that the characters are caught in the grip of an inescapable destiny reflects a nuanced understanding of predestination. Macbeth's ambition and subsequent downfall are eerily foretold by the witches, casting a shadow of inevitability over his choices. In more contemporary times, works such as Moby Dick by Herman Melville illustrate the complexity of predestination. The relentless pursuit of the white whale by Captain Ahab is, in many senses, a symbol of humanity's struggle against an inscrutable fate. The novel's rich symbolism and philosophical undertones invite readers to ponder the extent to which their paths are predetermined by forces beyond their control. Modern literature and films continue to explore and reimagine predestination, often through the lens of science fiction and fantasy. The Matrix trilogy, for instance, presents a dystopian reality where human lives are dictated by a predetermined program, blurring the boundaries between fate and autonomy. This contemporary medium allows for an examination of predestination in new and innovative ways, resonating with a modern audience that grapples with technology and determinism. Beyond literature, predestination finds a home in the visual arts. The iconic painting, The Persistence of Memory, by Salvador Dali, with its melting clocks, evokes a sense of time's fluidity and the elusive nature of destiny. Similarly, the works of Michelangelo in the Sistine Chapel, particularly the Creation of Adam, capture the intimate relationship between the divine and the human, suggesting a preordained connection that transcends time and space. Thus, it becomes evident that predestination is not a relic of bygone theological discourse but a living, breathing theme that continues to inspire and challenge artists and thinkers across the ages. The representations in art and literature serve as a reflective mirror, inviting each generation to explore and question the threads of destiny woven into the fabric of their existence. In this way, predestination remains a testament to humanity's enduring quest to understand its place within the grand cosmic design. As we draw this discussion to a close, let us briefly revisit the principal points we've explored together. We began with key biblical texts from Matthew, Romans, and Ephesians that shed light on the doctrine of predestination. These texts, rightly understood, offer profound insights into God's eternal plan and purpose. We then ventured through significant biblical narratives and historical contexts, examining figures like Paul and Peter, who played pivotal roles in shaping our understanding of predestination. Their lives and writings provided a rich tapestry of God's dealings and sovereign choices. Our journey also took us through the annals of theological history, introducing us to towering figures such as Augustine of Hippo and John Calvin. Their interpretations have had an enduring impact on Christian theology, urging us to grapple with the mysteries of divine election and human freedom. Subsequently, we considered various theological concepts, including election, free will, and divine sovereignty. These constructs, while seemingly abstract, bear tangible implications for how we perceive our relationship with God and our place in His grand design. Furthermore, we confronted challenges to traditional views by engaging with alternative perspectives and academic debates. Such critical examination not only fosters a deeper understanding but also reinforces the robustness of our faith. We also endeavored to draw comparisons with other religious beliefs and ancient mythologies, highlighting unique features and common themes. This comparative study enriched our comprehension of predestination within a broader cultural and historical context. Our exploration extended to archaeological discoveries and how they corroborate or contest traditional interpretations. These findings, coupled with scholarly insights, not only authenticate but also challenge our preconceived notions. Finally, we marveled at miraculous events and cultural representations, considering their influence on both individual faith and collective religious practice. These phenomena, though mysterious, serve as powerful reminders of the transcendent and the divine in our midst. As you reflect on these points, consider the enduring significance of predestination. It is not merely a doctrinal tenet but a profound truth that shapes our understanding of God's sovereign will and our ultimate purpose. If you found this journey enlightening, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share your thoughts in the comments section. Your feedback and suggestions are invaluable as we strive to delve deeper into the mysteries of faith and theology in future videos. May this discussion inspire you to seek and understand God's plan for your life with renewed vigor and faith. Let us bow our heads in prayer. Almighty Father, we come before you with hearts open and minds eager to comprehend your divine plan. We acknowledge that our understanding is finite and often clouded by our human limitations. Grant us clarity and discernment as we wrestle with the profound mystery of predestination. Lord, you who have laid the foundations of the earth and set the stars in the heavens, grant us the wisdom to perceive your hand at work in our lives. Teach us to trust in your sovereignty, recognizing that your plans for us are woven with threads of love and grace. We pray for guidance, dear Father, as we seek to understand our purpose within your grand design. May your Holy Spirit enlighten our hearts and minds, leading us to embrace the paths you have ordained for us with courage and faith. Lord, in moments of doubt or confusion, remind us that your ways are higher than our ways, and your thoughts higher than our thoughts. Instill in us a deep sense of peace, knowing that nothing is beyond your control and that all things work together for the good of those who love you. We ask for the strength to surrender our will to yours, Father, even when your plans differ from our desires. Help us to find solace and strength in your perfect wisdom, trusting that you are always working for our ultimate good and your glory. As we go forth in our individual journeys, may we seek your face continually, placing our trust not in our own understanding, but in your unfailing love and divine providence. Guide our steps and fill our hearts with unwavering faith as we walk the path you have set before us. In Jesus' name, we pray. Amen.